Welcome back, gang. Deltia from Deltiasgaming.com here, and we're going to talk about Dune Awakening. It's shaping up to be one of the most ambitious survival MMOs of 2025, blending the rich lore of the universe and series and this open world survival large-scale warfare. It's set to launch on May 20th, 2025 on PC only. The developers plan to release the game on PlayStation 5 eventually, and Xbox Series X and S, but there is no official release date. So in this video, we're going to break down all the latest updates, including new gameplay details, world building mechanics, survival, PvP, PvE, combat, and what to expect as the game gets closer to release. If you want to stay updated with Dune Awakening, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an update. Timestamps are below if you want to skip ahead. Let's get started. So what is Dune Awakening? This is a series written by Frank Herbert years and years ago, and it's set in the distant future where noble houses vie for control of this desert planet Arrakis. And you may have seen the movies, they're pretty good. They're battling over this special material called spice, which plays an important element in the game I'll touch on a little bit later. The heir to the house of Atreides, who rises to power after his family is betrayed. Paul becomes this messianic figure leading a rebellion against the oppressive rule of the Emperor and other factions. And the popular series of the books ultimately goes on a span of multiple generations as Paul's descendants struggle with their legacy he leaves behind. However, in Dune Awakening, it's an alternate timeline where Paul Atreides does not exist. So these people that Paul was set to discover have mysteriously disappeared, and this is where you're left off. Your task given to you by the Reverend Mother is to discover what happened to the Fremen. Along the way, you'll have the opportunity to prove yourself as an ally to one of the warring houses, and you're going to need every single ounce of wit, cunning, and survival skills to get through the harsh desert wasteland. So let's take you through what that looks like. First, an environment. When you begin Dune Awakening, you're going to crash land in this desert planet Arrakis. You're in trouble from the start because the sun can cause heat stroke, and you're going to be introduced to the game's mechanics slowly at the outset, and they're pretty unforgiving. Your first priority is to get some water and some shade, and then the challenges thrown at you via the environment continue to increase to get you used to all the things you're going to have to balance. We're talking the scorching sun, dehydration, lovely sandworms, scavengers, and sandstorms. It's constant battle for survival and struggle just to stay alive. In the initial part of the game, just like any survival game, you're going to be spending time gathering resources, trying to drink dew to stay alive, crafting weapons and items, and you're going to want to find a spot near a rock, an island, away from the shifting stands, and build at least a basic refuge or a basic home. If you leave yourself exposed to the sandworms, they're going to tear you apart. So building the right home from the outset is critical to surviving just the initial phase of the game. And once you get past the initial phase of the game, the world starts to open up and is massive and expansive, and you can start exploring. And as you start exploring, you're going to be exposed to the spice, which is crucial for space travel, granting prolonged life and heightened awareness. And this resource is what people are vying for in the game. It's also going to influence the power struggle between the houses and guilds over vying for that planet, which are player run. So in summary, when the survival mechanics hit, they're going to hit hard, and it's going to be very unforgiving at the beginning of the game. So you're going to have this dynamic environment hazards. You're going to have sandstorms, which will get a UI pop-up warning that it's going to come. The heat will go up and down depending on the environment and the day, and also if it's day or night. You're going to have to build a shelter to get away from these sandstorms and other possible dangers, and you're going to be constantly battling hydration and resource management. You're going to craft these still suits that will allow you to improve better water retention, but at the beginning, just getting a drink of water is all you can manage. And then you'll eventually get some options to travel further with grappling hooks, ornithopters, and other vehicles. So next up is combat, and you're introduced to this pretty early in the game. According to the developers at Funcom, combat is meant to be a mix of range gun battles, but also physical melee with a knife and the sword. If you saw the very first movie, there's a lot of mechanics with the knives, and specifically the shield that protects people from projectiles. So you're going to have to deal with that. You're not going to be able to just range snipe everything at a distance. You're going to have to get up close and personal, and that's what Dune goes for. So you're not going to want to limit yourself to specializing in one combat style. It really benefits you to have a balance of both, because the enemies you attack will have different tactics and you have to adapt. specifically the special shields that prevent them from being hurt from one type of weapon or the other. You're gonna have a lot of different technologies you can employ over time, like as poisons and grenades, range weapons, assault rifles, and of course knives. When you very first start off, you're gonna have a dart gun and a rudimentary knife, and the game's gonna walk you through how to upgrade those to more deadly weapons. So you're constantly fed a streamlined sense of progression with this game, as long as you don't get killed and lose everything, which we'll touch on a little bit later. And like other games, you're going to be able to choose a background at the start of the game. This is going to determine your skill tree that you get access to, and also kind of dialogue options. So speaking of that, there's going to be different combat archetypes: Bene Gesserit, Trooper, Mentat, and the Sword Master. These can be chosen during the character creation, which you can actually start doing right now via Steam. They have a thing you can download, Benchmark in Character Creator. I'd recommend you do that, secure your character look, and then kind of experiment with the options. You also have these enemy shield mechanics, which we've talked about, but this is going to be annoying to deal with, where you're going to have to temporarily disable them or use knives at a slow movement speed to get through. And you're going to have spice infused abilities. So this is going to be an expanded progression system, allowing players to tailor their specific build and class based on the spice power. And don't forget about the sandworms. They can just kill you outright at any time. Next up is research and crafting. So this is going to have its own progression system. And like other survival games, just picking up rocks or farming and harvesting nodes will earn you experience. So as long as you're constantly gathering, you can level up. Also, you can level up by completing missions and killing bad guys, the usual suspects, but it really rewards you from scavenging and just crafting, picking up things. Very similar to a game I love, like the Enshrouded game. And the main story quest after the crash land takes you step by step in a very streamlined way of crafting a specific thing that you need to get to the next area. Once you get to the next area, you get new and better materials. You'll have to harvest those, and then you'll build better weapons and tools. You guessed it, which will lead you to another area to rinse and repeat. So you're slowly expanding out, building bases, researching, crafting, and trying to push the boundaries of the map. And you're going to have a lot of different resource materials such as stone and metals. Eventually, you'll be able to craft a fabricator that will make more complex items for you early on in the game. Now, when you start researching crafting, step number one is to build a base. This is going to act as your permanent home, which you can build multiple and or deconstruct and move to another one. And this is your primary first task after you escape the crash. You're going to need 4 walls and a roof, just similar to other games, in a foundation. It's going to protect you from also the sandstorms and possible other environmental issues. You craft a console to claim a small portion of Arrakis for yourself. Remember, this is an MMORPG, so there'll be other people and other bases all around you once this game launches. Plus, if they don't lock their base or have the fuel in the generator, you can just walk in there and take all their stuff. That's a helpful tip. Do you want to pick a spot up against a rock, not out in the harsh environment, to set up your initial base? Once you build the base, foundation, walls, roof, then the doors go closed and you can power it with fuel. And then as you power it up, the doors will be able to open. You can set permissions on the door, specifically if you want your friends or other builders, other people in your guild to enter, or just keep them out. Then you start expanding your base. The base building so far looks and feels more practical and pragmatic versus playing dress up and decorating a bunch of things in the game, right? This is the harsh desert environment. Maybe later on the end game, there's a lot of flavor and cosmetics, but early on, it's just about utility, surviving, building things that can extract and farm water for you to survive. Let's say if you don't survive, you're gonna encounter death, which is super annoying. So like other survival games, when you die, it depends on what happens. Some games, what you're carrying in your backpack, specifically materials you farmed and harvest, will go away. And this is true in Dune. Now, when you die and you lose all that material, you'll still keep your guns and whatever's on your person, and you'll go to a respawn point or your base. You'll also have a marker and a pop-up where you can go back and loot your corpse and get those items back. However, the big twist on this is the sandworms. The sandworms chew you up, you die, you lose absolutely everything. All of that gear, all of those materials, everything on your person is completely gone. So this will set you back hours, and you definitely want to avoid the sandworms, especially in the starting zones. And there'll be mechanics that show you how to do this, but this is what's going to limit you from making progression very rapidly, is dying to the sandworms. And one of the ways you can avoid that is traversing with vehicles. So vehicles are going to play a huge role in social multiplayer, but also single player, because the game is a huge, massive desert and you're going to have to traverse it. Remember, being out open in the sunlight will cause you you essentially to die. So getting the vehicles, you'll be introduced as you advance your crafting and research pretty early on in the game. And this is how you get from one major area to another to find better materials, to craft better tools and weapons and so on, and progress. And eventually you can get ornithopters. So it's going to completely change how you travel and interact with the world. You're going to be on foot. You can build some like motorcycle looking things all the way up to a helicopter looking thing. So this game has a lot of variety when it comes to vehicles, and it will be unforgiving at first, but open up a lot of possibilities for exploration. Now, when it comes to PvE in the game, player versus environment, you're gonna have a lot of familiar mechanics to other RPGs or MMOs over the last decade. Dune Awakening will start you an entirely PvE zone, so you're not gonna be griefed or ganked by the sweat lords that wanna go pick on noobs. And the starting game will have a lot of the hallmarks of normal RPGs or survival games. Grabbing material, using the crafting system, creating basic tools, building a shelter, and then crafting better machines before you expand and move on. And once you've established this foothold, proper suit and weapons, then you can start exploring and recover the map, and then fighting scavengers. And then once you start adventuring further out, the main quest is going to point you towards point of interest. You're going to find trainers for skill trees, which you can unlock by completing quests for them. Side quests may seem small, but they're worth doing because of the XP boost, and you can level faster along with unlocking the other skill trees, which is very helpful for balancing both melee and range combat. There's going to be ecology labs where this will serve as a dungeon. Players can dive in unique locations, fiddle with scavengers, secrets, special crafting materials, and so forth. And these locations are seamlessly a part of the overland and not something you have to queue for into or a loading screen. Then later on in the game, you're going to be introduced into two warring factions currently fighting for power on Arrakis, House Atreides, House Harkonnen. And the developers also suggest there might be a third secret faction revealed later on. But this is where players' guilds can be created with their loyalties, ties to a faction, and their player choice. And that leads us to PvP. Overall, the developers at Funcom said they want PvP in the game to focus on fighting for resources instead of destroying each other, but we'll see how that plays out. So PvP portion of Dune Awakening will take place almost entirely on its own map in the deep desert beyond the Shield Wall Mountains. Consequently, PvP will not be required of players, and it will have limited impact on PvE portions of the map. This I actually like, because I don't want to be griefed by someone who basically plays 18 hours a day in their basement and no life so just to go find noobs like me gathering some material. However, there is going to be compelling resources for you to risk it out in the deep desert. Major spice resources where they're found. So players can and likely will need to build bases on the PvP desert map and understand that these are made to potentially be attacked. There's also a strong political system and intrigue, so cartographers can scan areas for resources and other points of interest to contribute to their faction or sell to the highest bidder. Moreover, even those who prioritize crafting and gathering resources can support their faction by offering materials critical to the vote or selling rare items or exchanges. This has me intrigued and worried because a lot of player-driven guild world control games of recent note have not done very well and aged well. I'm talking Thrones of Liberty and New World. And the reason why is they're very hard to stay competitive with people that play a gazillion hours a day versus casuals that get off work and want to play 2-3 hours. So what you end up happening is the vultures that dominate the server go and grief and kill everybody, control all the resources, have the best gear and best weapons, and then someone who casually plays has no chance to even dent a hole in them, so they change servers or eventually quit. But we'll see how this plays out and what things Funcom can do to limit this. Next up is group versus solo play. So I like to play solo, and this is what I love about Enshrouded is you can jump in with a bunch of other players, and this really increases how fast you can progress because obviously everyone's pooling their resources together and building and progressing very strategically. So players that group up will have a much better chance of surviving early on and basically making it through their research and farther into the zones. However, if you're a casual gamer that likes to play by yourself, you can explore and progress, but it's just going to be significantly slower. You're going to be building your base, getting your vehicle, going out and exploring. So the game will incentivize you to band together with friends in guilds and operate under one of the two houses and choose your alliance specifically for PvP. And even if you don't plan on PvPing and doing combat, there is a major reason to do this, participate and contribute for your guild's progression. So it will vie for power of who is controlling the land, which will ultimately lead to a power struggle. And we'll see how this actually unfolds later on when the game is is released. So I'm really looking forward to Dune. I love Enshrouded, and playing as an MMORPG may be great or may not be, depending on how they limit power and other people's experience. But if you can play this game entirely solo and PvE, I will definitely check it out on the game's launch, and it's shaping up to be one of the biggest games I'm looking forward to 2025. Got something out of this video? Like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.